What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of The Next Come Up. I'm your host, your main man, Brian Black. And on today's show, our guest will be an award-winning film composer, a music producer who's worked with many Billboard and Grammy-nominated music talent. This young man has also scored commercials for many major brands such as Netflix, BET, and Bravo. Our guest today is none other than Roman Molino Dunn. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. Yeah. Thanks for joining me, man.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm glad you made it. You're here safe. You didn't drink any wine with me, but that's okay.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah,
afterwards.
It's early, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So Roman, just to get started, tell the audience a little bit about yourself. Where are you from?
I'm from Pennsylvania originally, the Poconos, a small town called Kunkletown, but rather close to New York City, about an hour, 45 minutes away. And then when I went to college, I moved to New York City. I went to Hunter. And then eventually I started working as a music producer and film composer. And here we are.
And so now you are an official New Yorker. Can we get that on the record?
Yeah. I've been here long enough.
Right.
About 15 years.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet. So growing up in PA, what fueled your passion for music?
Oh, well, aside from that, there wasn't a whole lot else to do. We grew up around it. There was a piano in the house when I was a kid. My brother is a great musician. My parents always instilled in us a great love for the arts and music in particular. So it was just something I did at a very early age, and the passion just formed naturally.
Right. Well, now, were you trained formally, like any particular instruments or anything like that?
Yeah. There's a lot of music lessons in my youth. So piano is my main instrument.
Okay.
And we had to take lessons our whole lives. Both, when I say we, my brother and I. But then also in school, we took, a lot of stuff. Saxophone, guitar, drums, voice lessons.
So you sing too?
Not publicly.
Shower.
Yeah,
well, I got shot. Right.
But it's part of the job. Sometimes, when you're working with artists, you have to sing back your ideas, or you're demoing things. So it's a part of what I do, but I'm not a singer per se.
Right.
A lot of music lessons growing up formally, and then I went to school for music composition and theory.
Now, growing up, who were your musical inspirations in terms of artists?
Oh, I've circled around all the different genres. So when I was a kid, I liked classical, and then I didn't, and I was really into rock music. And then when I was in college, I kind of rejected that and just went, classical all the way. And then what ended up happening as I started to work in music, then the classical started falling on the wayside, and I was working with popular music genres. And then it circled back around where I was doing more music for commercials and films, and the classical training really was more applicable to what I was doing than it had been just working with commercial recording artists.
This is like a little more technical.
It's technical, and sometimes the project really requires that I'm writing classical music. Sometimes it's that I'm writing popular music. Sometimes it's this mishmash hybrid of the genres. So every day it's a little different, and having the background in both of those has been really helpful. So maybe that was a long-winded way to tell you I like a lot of different things, but growing up it was a journey.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So now these days, I know you told me you've been in the game, for lack of a better term, for about 15 years.
Yeah, roughly. Yeah.
Right. So you're working in music full time, obviously, film, TV, commercials. Who do you rock in the car? Like, do you have anybody that you listen to these days?
So we were chatting earlier about like what I like to do after work, and the work schedule is a little intense, so I'm sometimes there for 12 hours, 14 hours a day working on a project. At the end of the day, rocking anything in the car is like pretty much the last thing that I want to do. But when I do find myself craving something, it's usually early music, so Renaissance music, Baroque music, something that's a little bit lighter in general, since a lot of the music I do is intense. So the popular music with commercial recording artists, there's always a very prominent beat. So sometimes I need to get away from that, get away from the drums in general. And then when I'm doing film scoring, oftentimes it's very intense emotionally. So I like to listen to this. You know, the scenes in film are usually, it's drama.
Right. So it's almost like the way you decompress in a sense.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of times it's no music. Silence really is the most beautiful thing after a full day of listening to the same scene or the same song for hours.
Right.
So I guess the answer, yeah, silence is probably my best friend after work. But if I had to choose something, it would probably be Renaissance or Baroque music. Right. Yeah.
Now, I don't know too much about that because I was going to say, who's your favorite artist?
Yeah, sure.
But to educate us, like, so music from that period, is there any particular artists or composers, I should say, that really you crave, I don't want to say crave, but that you reach out to?
Certainly, yeah. So from the early music, I'm really into Monteverdi. It's something that speaks to my own sensibilities, probably more from my training. And also because it's not something I get to do at work very frequently. Right. You know, in the film scoring world, strong, prominent melodies aren't always in fashion. What I'm doing now, a lot of it is more atmospheric and textural. So at the end of the day, I'm craving some melody. Right. And in the Renaissance music, there's usually an abundance of melodies, and it satisfies that part of my artistic craving, at least to hear it. And then when I get to do it at work, it's super fulfilling. Right. Yeah, so that's kind of what I resonate with.
So how does that play with your significant other, like when you're in the car on a long drive, and, can I turn the music up, honey? And you're like, so how does that go over with?
It's great, because I mean, at the end of the day, I still really do love music, even if I get, you know, a little burnout at the end of a long work day.
Right.
But my wife is very understanding about what I do for work in general, and in general. So sometimes when no music is what's needed, it's not really a problem.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned your wife. How supportive is she of your career endeavors?
Incredibly. She's here actually right now, so that gives you a sense of how supportive she is. Right. And I mean, with what I do, it requires me sometimes to work really odd hours. I'll have to work on a weekend or get up very early and then work very late. The projects are usually very taxing, and music for film is usually the last thing that they do. So the picture's ready, everything's done. We need original music because we can't use these temp tracks that we're using. So, and with the commercial stuff, it's even worse. We need it yesterday.
Oh, wow.
So sometimes I'm having to go to work very odd hours or late hours, and she's just incredibly supportive, even though her own job is very demanding hour-wise. So it's a great match. Yeah.
Now, did that take some time to kind of for her to understand that not to understand, but did you guys have to work to some sort of agreement as time went on during the course of the relationship?
No, when you find the perfect person, it's not a conversation you actually have to have.
Right.
Yeah. So I was lucky on that front.
Right. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. We should all be so lucky with that, to be honest with you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, I've worked with my writing coach, for example. I remember him telling me one time, he said, you know, he's been divorced about 3 or 4 times, you know, and he's like, yeah, you know, I had a couple of wives. You know, I had a couple of wives, Brian? I'm like, no. They didn't support me.
Oh, man.
You know, now, and he got rid of them. You know, and I wouldn't suggest that you do that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's awesome that, you know, you didn't even, it sounds like from what you're saying that you didn't even have to broach these things in terms of disagreements, and, you know, she's very accepting of what you do. Yeah. You know, so that's a blessing in itself.
Yeah, it really is.
You know. Yeah. What about your family?
Same thing. I mean, as I was saying, a lot of my initial passion was a result of the support of my family. So, I mean, they're floored every time, you know, I get a new project, or they hear my music, or you know, there's some kind of publicity for something I'm doing. I think it makes them really happy, and I feel the support there. I really wouldn't be possible to do what I'm doing if I didn't have that kind of support for a lifetime to get to where I am and where I'm going.
Now, were your parents also, I don't know if you mentioned it, but were your parents also musicians themselves?
No, not at all. Yeah, no musicians in my family other than my brother. We're really not sure how that happened, that the both of us do this. Yeah.
Now, so you went to Hunter, like you said, and you went through the accelerator program, got your master's. So growing up, when did you actually have that aha moment that you said, you know what, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life?
So I was very involved musically, my whole life, but I also played a lot of sports, and the real decision came when I was 16, where I decided that I wasn't going to do sports anymore, and I was going to focus on music. I had a pretty bad sports injury.
Oh, wow.
I shattered my leg skateboarding, which, typical teenage kind of thing to do.
Oh, wait, was that the sport or was that recreation?
Yeah, sure. Well, I was treating it as it was extreme sport, I
and it is
suppose.
extreme sport, correct.
But I had aspirations for that as well.
Right.
And I decided later that was an unrealistic aspiration, because once your body goes,
oh, yeah,
all you have is your mind. And musically, as long as I had my mind, I could do music. In my hands. Although we're getting to a point where it really can be done without playing the music as much as what you think about, and writing it down or using a computer to help you do that. So when I was 16, I decided that I was going to approach it as though it was going to be my job for the rest of my life. And that was a difficult thing, because music's not, at least at the time, I suppose now it's a little different, but back then, my guidance counselors or teachers and things weren't necessarily the most supportive of that as a life goal, since finding a job in music isn't a guarantee.
Right.
But
anything in the entertainment industry.
Yeah,
really.
Exactly, right? I'm sure everybody goes through that who's in this kind of industry. But I do remember after that injury, I decided that I was just going to read music theory books and study scores until it happened.
Now, you mentioned something interesting, and it was on my mind. Again, you've been doing this 15 years. You've been at this, right? How has the music industry evolved or changed over these 15 years? We have different streaming services. I can remember Netscape. I think not Netscape, Napster. Back in the day. Some people are like, what's Napster? They don't even know what that is. So from professionally, how has the industry changed over these last 15 years or so?
Oh, well, there's a lot that's changed. I mean, if you mean specifically in distribution,
or in all aspects. So you work. So let's take a look, I guess, step by step. So you work with music artists in terms of them composing and writing. So how has that changed or evolved? From a technological standpoint, you mentioned something. Hey, you might not even need hands to create music anymore. What's been some of the?
Well, the overheads have gone down for sure. A lot of what we're doing is done digitally. So I can produce an entire track for somebody just using a computer, right? Even though I own a recording studio, I don't play every instrument in the studio. We use computers to generate a lot of it.
Right.
I'm still there programming it, so to speak, but you don't have to hire all of the live musicians. Although I suggest doing that when it's possible, but sometimes it's not possible. So the overheads have gone down a little bit on that, but also the back ends have gone down. But the interesting thing I see, which doesn't necessarily benefit me as much as it benefits an artist, is that the recording is almost a promotional tool. So they'll come to the studio and do tracks, and they're releasing that music almost for free. Something like Spotify is such a low royalty rate that you're not really doing it for the pay. If you know what you're doing, you're doing it so that you're booking out concerts and touring, and maybe eventually building up enough steam to be on the radio or get synced with television or something. That's my experience. I'm sure people who are watching this might think may not agree with that opinion, but that's kind of what I've seen, at least on the to the distribution, how that's changed and the overheads have changed.
Right. Now, and that's more of I know you said it keeps overhead down in terms of the way things are now. So that's a benefit to you as a person who co-owns a studio. And
that's actually somewhat of a detriment to me in some way, because the budgets aren't as high to record an album. And I would have been in the position to be making some of that money. But at the same time, we can do higher volume because it's easier to do so. But then you also deal with people who are not needing a studio because they're doing it on a laptop. But again, there is only so much you can do before you start needing to pay for things in any facet of life if you really want quality. So It's an interesting industry like that, you
Right.
know. A lot's changed, I suppose, but I'm sure a lot's changed for someone who's been in the industry for 30 years, who's seeing that, and what I'm saying is just a small change, you know.
Right. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about your first professional job. You know, where was it and what was that like for you?
S- in anything or in music,
Music.
specifically?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I tried everything in music. My goal was really just to be in music in general. I knew that I wanted to be a composer, but I couldn't really see how to make that a reality when I was in college. So one of the skills that you learn when you're in school for becoming a composer or a theorist is transcribing, which is being able to listen to music and write it down.
Right.
And so, actually, this kind of speaks to your last question. 15 years ago, sheet music was used a whole lot more. Okay, so people would write down the music and the musicians would play it,
Right.
which happens a whole lot less in my life now than it used to, which is unfortunate because I really love sheet music. It was my first professional music job, and that was when I was 18 in college. I was providing sheet music for people who couldn't transcribe their own music. So artists or bands would play a song, but they weren't necessarily classical musicians, so they didn't know how to notate what they were playing. So I would take their recordings and turn them into sheet music.
Oh, wow.
So that they could give them to other musicians to play it. And that kind of led me to working in studios doing arrangements for people. It was actually a natural transition from being a music transcriber and engraver, making the sheet music, to doing arrangements for bands and artists, to being a producer for them, to running a recording studio. Yeah.
So what kind of lesson, other than, you know, in reading the sheet music and transcribing, that's a skill. Like no one, I guess, coming up in this day and age, not too many people can say that they have that skill set.
Yeah, it depends on the subsect of the industry. So if you're doing popular music or music production in general, sheet music is not always something that you do, depending on the genre. You know, if you're working in jazz or classical music, it is something a lot of people do. But certain genres of music, it's just not really a large part of it anymore, or maybe it never was. I'm not entirely sure, depending on the genre. But yeah, that was a very specific skill set that I had, and I wanted to try to make money on doing that any way that I could. And luckily, it kind of came full circle. Like I was saying with my influences, it worked for me, and then it didn't work for me, and now luckily all of those things are kind of coming together all at once.
What kind of lessons did you take from those early experiences that you kind of add to your toolbox to use these days?
Oh, everything. I mean, it's such a cumulative job. Everything that I do is a result of all the other things that I've done, I guess, like any job. But in the sense that when I'm working on a project for an artist, oftentimes it's because they know I did this other project. And so I'm able to kind of combine those things together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, as we stated before, you work with film. You do film composition. You've actually brought some clips of some of your work.
Oh,
so next come up, fam. Let's take a look at some of Roman's work real quick.
Thanks.
We have detected an anomaly within your brain activity.
Sometimes I don't know if I belong here.
You mean extraterrestrial.
I have experienced things. Abnormal things.
The mutation in your blood is highly concerning. It's rapidly evolving. Lower body temperature, higher blood pressure, increased psychic abilities. The current state of the world today is unstable, and I think you are a severe threat to humankind.
You want to make the world a better place. Better never means better for everyone. If this is what freedom looks like, what happens when I get out?
Okay, so first of all, that was really cool.
Thank you. Yeah.
You know, the film was really cool.
Yeah.
The music was dope too. Like it fit. So kudos to you on
Thank
that.
you.
And I get excited when I see stuff like that because I'm a big comic book fan. I'm a big nerd.
Yeah.
Actually, so I love sci-fi and
Yeah.
things like that. So tell us a little bit about that film. What was the name of that film?
It's called Us. It's actually a trailer for a pilot.
Okay.
So the director, I think his name popped up on the screen there at the end of that, is a gentleman named Angelo White. And he's known for his VFX. He does a lot of visual effects for major Hollywood films. He's done stuff like Judge Dredd and The Hobbit, and just a huge list of credits as a VFX artist. And he's breaking into being a director. And those are the kind of people that I want to work with who are the next come up, they're doing something at a very high level and then they're breaking into another role so we can grow together. So I've done 2 projects with Angelo and they're always visually stunning, which makes what I do sound even better.
Right.
I wish I could say my music's the best at making you have that experience, but it's the combination of what he's done visually and what I'm able to do sound-wise.
Right.
And the neat thing about that project was I got to do the full sound for it. So a lot of times when you're scoring, you work with a sound designer, or you don't even get to work with the sound designer. You do the music, and then the sound designer goes and adds all these sound effects afterwards. But luckily on that one, I got to do the full project. So
Awesome.
I got to score it and then put all of the great sounds in there. So I was really proud of that project.
That's awesome. And I want to come back to that in a second.
Sure.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to take a look at a clip of a commercial that you also
Great.
provided for us too.
Thanks.
Let's take a look.
The ancients believed the trident had the power to tame the sea, that it could harness waves, quiet storms, and summon great beasts. For them, the sea was the end of the earth, where man confronted the unknown. And so it attracted certain men who forged their own path. To this day, they wield it skillfully in life's great struggles. They know what we've always believed. When you hold the trident, you awaken its soul.
Ooh, Maserati. Now, did they actually give you a Maserati to score the
No, they
film?
didn't.
Darn
Yeah,
it!
I know.
Darn
Yeah,
it!
gotta have better terms next
No,
time. Yeah.
gotta speak to your manager about
Yeah.
that one. No, awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Just real quick, and I noted a couple more, but just off the top of your head, who are some other clients commercially that you've worked for?
So I do a lot of fashion commercials. So I've done stuff for Clinique, Michael Kors, Maybelline, Kopari, hotels, Marriott.
Awesome.
Just to name a few, yeah.
Oh, awesome. So we've got one more clip.
Oh, okay, yeah.
One more clip for you. So let's take a look. This clip is from you scored a comedy. This was a comedic work, so it's a little different than the serious. And you
Sure.
mentioned it, intense film work and the serious Maserati commercial. So there's a little lighter feel to it. So let's take a look.
Definitely is.
Jesus, Mum, knock.
Yeah, it's definitely a little different.
Oh yeah.
But I love that. Granted, we could show that clip on TV, right?
Hey.
Yeah.
This is 2019. This
Yeah.
is the internet.
Everything.
We got
yeah,
this.
Sure,
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But I really love that one too, because that actually is a comedic clip from a larger piece that has some drama in it.
Okay.
And that did very well. It's by a Canadian filmmaker named Lee Rivenbark, who's won a lot of film festivals with that piece. So check that out. Look up "Breathing Through a Straw" online.
Breathing Through a Straw. Breathing Through a Straw, you said?
Breathing Through a
Sure,
Straw.
I apologize.
It's a great piece. I'm really proud of that one.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, real quick, in your opinion, how important is music to film?
Well, it's my opinion, of course, but I would say it's 50% of it. You know, there's two main senses that are stimulated when you're watching a film, and it's your eyes and your ears, and one really can't exist without the other in that media. I suppose they could if it was a silent film, but then the silence is playing a key aspect of that too. For me, it's more, just because of what I do, but realistically, it's 50%. You know, I'm sure a director might
Disagree.
Yeah, although a lot of my favorite directors actually do have that opinion. It's not all music though. So sound is really important. Sound design is really important.
When you're working on a project, whether it be film, commercial, or other, do you actually get to provide input on it, or do you come to the table rather with the idea, or you say, "Hey, this is what we need"?
So I'm realistic about what my role is, and my role really isn't to write what I want. That's not what I do, and I don't do that for even when I'm working with a commercial artist. My job is to find the music that the director hears in their own head and help them achieve that. So I rarely come to the table with, this is what I would do, this is what I want to do, you know.
And what happens when you guys disagree at the end, on the back end of things?
Rarely happens.
Awesome.
I'm pretty, like I said, realistic about the fact that it's their project, and I'm just trying to help them tell their story.
Right. Now, Roman, one of the things we always like to ask our guests on the next come up, what advice would you have for someone who's trying to pursue a goal, or a career rather, in music, who aspires to do what you do?
I would say that you need to work on your craft before you try to offer your craft to others. So something that really helped me was music theory. And again, this is just me. Some people would probably jump in and think that the theory background's not as important, or the composition lessons aren't as important. But for me, I've found that that's been a constant in every project that I do, whether it's writing a track for a reality TV star or scoring a commercial. It's understanding the basics of music so that I can understand what people expect me to do.
Right. Awesome. So now, before we get out of here, Roman, tell people how they can get in contact with you. How can they find you?
You can find me online. My website, well, there's 3 of them I'd like to mention if that's okay. So I own a recording studio with my partner, Jay Rothman, who's also a great composer. It's miratone.com. And then for my commercial music, working with artists, it's electropointmusic.com. And if you're watching this show, I know you're loving film stuff, so romanmolinodunn.com for all of my film scoring.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, next come up fan, Roman, thank you.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
No,
Yeah.
we appreciate it. That was great. I had a good time.
Thanks. Me too.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your main man, Brian Black. I'm out.
Hey!